Okay, so good morning, students. Welcome back to the next session on Iranian cinema. Today, we will focus specifically on the films of Jafar Panahi. No, I'm sorry, the prescribed film of Jafar Panahi. In the previous class, we of course took a look at the significance of Jafar Panahi as a 21st century filmmaker or part of the Iranian new wave and how his films really represent the Iranian new waves. And among the many films that he has made and which he continues to make, we have the film Offside, the 2000 film Offside. So it's a 21st century film that is prescribed for our study. Jafar Panahi, the one who was apprenticed to the major Iranian filmmaker Abbas Kiarostami, and under whom he learned the art of subtle movie making. So let us see how he takes on the task of negotiating his way through a society where the restrictions laid down on filmmakers are quite significant and quite cumbersome, I would say. Okay, so before I begin discussion on the movie Offside itself, let me invite your attention to a slide which I will present now. Give me a moment. I hope it's visible, the screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What do you see there? I can tell you that it is made up of three images. It is not just a single image. You have three images there. Can anyone tell me what these are? No one? These are paintings, okay, but what kind of paintings? What specific kind of paintings are we seeing here on the screen? Is it a Renaissance painting, a Dutch Renaissance painting, or is it an Italian painting like the ones done by Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, for example? Is it a Raja Ravi Varma painting? Is it a Rabindranath Tagore painting? Is it an example of Japanese silk art? Is it a kind of modernist film painting done by, let us say, Picasso? Or is it a surrealist painting done by Salvador Dali? Is it an impressionist film painting? Or are these impressionist paintings done by the likes of Monet, Claude Monet, pointillist? I can think of any number of schools of painting: impressionist, post-impressionist, pointillist, expressionist, like the kind of paintings done by Edvard Munch. No, there is a specific term that you can think of to describe these kind of paintings. These are Persian miniature paintings. We have seen similar paintings in the Mughal school of painting in India, the Mughal paintings, Mughal miniatures, the Bahadi, the Mughal miniatures bear a close resemblance to this because they were heavily influenced by these paintings that came from these regions in and around Persia. Okay, so these are Persian miniature paintings. What would you describe as some of the features of these paintings based on what you see here? Comparing it with, for example, the painting of, let us say, an impressionist painters or an expressionist painters or the expressionist painters. Anything? Take a close look at the paintings and tell me. Are these realistic paintings? Or not realistic? No responses. To a certain extent, realistic, right? You can find the human figures, for example. They look pretty much like human figures. You do not have a distortion. You do not have a surrealist depiction of the human and animal figures as you would probably have in a Dali, Salvador Dali painting. You do not have a cubist, modernist kind of depiction of human figures as you would have in Picasso painting, for example. But at the same time, you find that when it comes to the perspective, everything, you have the tree and the people, they're all on the same plane. There is no depth. So to that extent, there is a little bit of less realism there. However, it is therefore a combination of realism and a little bit of not so much of realism. But more than that, what strikes you the most in these paintings is the large number of details. There's so much of detailing. Look at the trees, look at the leaves, look at the carpets, look at the pond there, look at the borders done. A great deal of fine detail. These are paintings that are not in, these are not mural paintings which would occupy huge walls, for example. These are not large, bas relief paintings which would be set against a rock, for example. These are tiny miniature paintings done on paper with a great deal of intricate detailing, the leaves and the plants and the animals and the clothes and the borders and the calligraphy. Sometimes they have a lot of writing also. There is a great deal of fine detailing. That is one of the significant features of Persian miniature paintings. And that is what has sometimes been used, or this image of, or the comparison with Persian paintings is something that has been used by a few theater or film critics to talk about the films of Jafar Panahi. In fact, a great deal of the new wave, Iranian new wave and new Iranian cinema, you have a great deal of very subtle and very intricate details which might sometimes escape our attention. But when you take a closer look, you realize that there is a great deal that they convey. The macro picture may convey something, but it is when you go into the details that you find the very subtle suggestions, the very, very suggestive hints that they make. We are aware of the fact that the Iranian film industry in the post-revolutionary era has survived only because it has negotiated its way through the restrictions in this very aesthetic and subtle manner. Had they been very explosively protesting, in the way that Latin American films, the films described by Getino and Solanas, for example, or the ones made by them on the pattern of the Hour of the Furnaces, if they had taken on that kind of very strong, very loud, very very loudly protesting tone in their films, we know that they would have had to close shop, and that would have brought to an end all the adventures, all the film making. Just a second. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, so that would literally have brought the curtains down on all their filmmaking attempts, and therefore it is with a great deal of nuanced patterns that they have evolved their art and trained under the master or trained under the wings of a filmmaker like Kiarostami, Jafar Panahi has also developed that subtle art of suggestion. So this is what the director Peter Sellers said when he introduced the movie Taxi at a major film festival. Taxi is a film made by Jafar Panahi, one of the later movies. I think it was in 2015 that he made it. And it is significant because he acts in it. As in many of the other films that he has made, he makes an appearance. And it is in the conversations that he, as an actor, as a character, makes with the other characters, some of them especially who are children, as you have it in Kiarostami's films, that you have him suggesting very important messages. So this is what Peter Sellers said. The genius of Jafar is that, of course, he's working in the tradition of the Persian miniature. You can do some tiny, tiny gesture, which is a whole universe. In these little things, you convey the truth that, is as immense as the universe itself. And inside the miniature, in the context of this film, it's like a series of cab rides on this particular day depicted in the movie Taxi. You have the character of the taxi driver enacted by Jafar Panahi going around the city of Tehran with different passengers. It's all set on one single day. And with each of the passengers, you get to know some facet of Iranian life. So it is in fact a portrait of his whole country. This single day's taxi journeys give you a portrait of the whole country. One of the most moving things is that the film isn't an angry fist at the regime. Had he raised an angry fist and pointed out the gross injustices meted out by the establishment or the regime, we know that he would have been in worse trouble than he already was in. We are aware of the constant arrests that he has quoted. He's in and out. He's been in and out of prisons. He's faced bans on filmmaking. But in spite of that, he has, edged his way out and made very meaningful films. And one of the most moving things is that the film is not an angry fist at the regime. It's not like, raising a protest against the regime. It has its equanimity. There is a great deal of balance there. It's humor and it's normalcy. And therefore, one may consider this as an example or a film that is both a metaphor and a reality. What you have there is the depiction of reality, but it is not entirely reality as you would have it in Italian neorealism, for example. This is reality that masquerades as a metaphor, or a metaphor that masquerades as reality. Just a moment, let that bulldozer pass. Yeah, so this is a very significant assessment of Jafar Panahi's films in general, and I'm sure we can apply that to the movie that we have got to discuss as well. Yeah, so in Taxi, you have many passengers. Some of them, one of them is in fact a very well-known activist, Iranian activist. He made her one of the characters, and everyone knew. This activist is also somebody, a woman activist. I forget her name now, but she's also somebody who's been in trouble, who's landed in trouble with the establishment. But he made her one of the passengers, and that was conveying a great deal. And another significant passenger who gets into his taxi is a little girl. He got his own niece to enact the role of the little girl. Like in Italian neorealist films, here also you have a lot of non-professional actors. It is often not very possible for the filmmakers to raise the kind of money that would be able to support or to get the services of very important stars. So very often they make do with a lot of non-professional actors. Sometimes actors would also feel very uncomfortable about acting in anti-establishment films, however subtle and suggestive they are. So this is the little girl. I think her name is Hannah. So during the course of her ride in this taxi, she's armed, she has a camera in her hand, and it is as part of a school project, that she has this camera. And therefore, they get down to the task of discussing cinema. This again is a feature of Jafar Panahi's films. In a lot of the movies, you have very self-reflexive gazes directed at the art of filmmaking itself, as it happens in postmodern fiction, where you have a lot of self-reflexivity turned, or looking at the art of writing, looking at the craft of writing. Here also, a lot of self-reflexivity, introspecting on filmmaking, and the significance of making films. So this little girl, they are discussing, and the school film project that she has to do, and she says, she's aware. She says, "I'm fully aware of what I should be doing when I make these movies. I should obey the diktats of the government. And what are they? Respect Islamic headscarves, avoid contact between men and women, avoid violence, avoid discussing political or economic issues, and avoid sordid realism." These were the instructions given by the government. You would ask, what else can you film? If all these are avoided, what is left for you to film? But there are things left for you to film or to tell stories about. In any case, this is the kind of instruction that has been given by the government. And, by making the child speak these instructions and responding to it with just a little, a very subtle, sly smile, you have a whole discourse emanating. In the innocent voice of the child, you have a very veiled look or protest against the kind of strict regimentation that is imposed by the government on filmmakers. So, and in the response of the filmmaker himself, in the smile that he gives, you have the response of the film industry to the instructions given by the government. So the director, who plays himself posing as the driver of a Tehran taxi, smiles quietly, and then the two go on to chat about the difficulties of sticking to the rules and how they can make a movie in between all these. It's like getting into a labyrinth. You have walls all around, but still you can find your way through it. And the scene is characteristic of Taxi, the film that operates on many levels as a meditation on cinema, a rebuke to the Iranian leadership, a celebration of the verve of the country's citizens, but that also wears its seriousness lightly. You never think that this is a serious protest film at all. It is through the language of humor, it is through very light situations that these very powerful messages are conveyed. It wears its seriousness lightly, even when the stakes are very high. So it is with that gaze that we will now look at the movie Offside, made in 2006, which was in fact based on a real event. This was the qualifying match between Bahrain and Iran. I forget the exact year in which it was made. I do not think it is 2006. In any case, I think I had mentioned that in the previous class. The match was one that was played between Iran and Bahrain, and the winner of that match would go to play the Football World Cup. So it was a very, very significant match as far as the Iranians were concerned, and it was a match that was played in the Azadi Stadium in the city of Tehran. But the women of Tehran were not allowed to watch the movie. And that is what, the match, that is what the movie is all about. In fact, Jafar Panahi's own daughter had made an attempt, like many other girls of Iran, to disguise as a boy and get into the stadium in disguise. so that she could watch the match live. And it was this incident involving his own daughter that probably inspired Panahi to make this movie. Before we go into the movie itself, I guess we can talk about the title. Those of you who are enthusiastic about football would know about this rule in football. What is an offside? An offside is basically a kind of foul. You would have heard the whistle go off somewhere in between the match where you think that a goal would be scored, and many a time you find the ball going into the net, and then there is a great deal of jubilation, only to come, for the jubilation to come crashing down in a moment when you hear that loud, shrill whistle, which is often given by the line referee, not the main referee, but the line referee, who would be positioned in such a way that the referee would be able to see the movement of the players. And it is a foul, even if the ball is netted, even if it's gone into the goal post, it would be disallowed, because this would be a foul. How does that happen? When any part of the head, body, or feet of this player, the player who is ahead, it can be just his hand, his or her hand, or the head, or even the foot, if it is in the opponent's half, excluding the halfway line, that is after the halfway line, in the opponent's side, near the goal post. It need not be even near the goal post. At any point in the opponent's half, if the player of the opposing side is in front of the ball and the second last player, that is the goalie is of course there, but the member of the other team, the second last member of the other team, if this player is ahead of the ball and the second last member of the other team, then it is an offside. You can see that clearly in both the image, the graphic image there, and the real image there. In the graphic image on the left side, you have the blue player performing an offside because he has come before the second last opponent, that is the defender of the red team. The goalie is there, but he has moved ahead. In the second one, the white player has moved ahead of the ball. Ball is somewhere far behind, and then he is in front in the opponent's half, even ahead of the second last defender. Second last defender is also marked there, and this is a foul, therefore. So it is a movie that involves a foul. What is the foul? Who is the one who is doing the foul is a question that you can ask yourself, and which the filmmaker makes us ask ourselves as we watch this movie, made with these this Persian movie involving I'll just read out the names in that order: Sima Mubarak Shahi, Shaista Irani, Golnaz Farmani, Mana Sabihi, Aida Sadiki, and then the male player there, Safdar Samandar. The image that I have put there of Safdar Samandar is very, very significant. Can you tell me in what way that is significant? The others are all women who are disguised as men and who try to get into the stadium. Of course, they are not successful. They are not able to. These girls are not able to. They are put in a little pen-like, a little enclosure just outside the stadium. But can you tell me what is significant about this shot where you have that male character, Safdar Samandar? He acts the role of a policeman who is put in charge of guarding these girls. And in between, one of them is desperate to go to the toilet. And that is when you have the shot. He takes her there because he cannot allow her to go. He thinks that she will watch the match. And then he accompanies her. And as they come out, this is what happens. He comes and stands like this. What is he doing? Dressed in that uniform, what is he doing? Anyone?
For her.
Hmm?
After taking her to the toilet, she is missed. No?
She is?
She has run away from there, and he was searching for her throughout.
Yeah, but this happens just before that, just before he discovers that she has disappeared. ഇത് അതിന് തൊട്ട് മുമ്പാണ്. What is happening there?
He is watching the match.
Is he watching the match? The match is behind him, no?
മാം വേറെ കുറെ ആൾക്കാർ വന്നിട്ട് അടി ഉണ്ടാക്കാൻ ശ്രമിക്കുന്നില്ലേ?
അതല്ല ഈ ഷോട്ടിൽ അതല്ലല്ലോ കാണുന്നത്. In this particular shot, what is happening? ആ ഒരു ഇമേജിൽ, which is very significant for the whole movie. What is he doing there? From his pose, it is quite evident, I think, what he is doing there എന്നുള്ളത്. No one is able to say that. നിങ്ങൾ വാച്ച് ചെയ്തിട്ടില്ല അല്ലേ മൂവി? ഓൺലി സം ഓഫ് യു ഹാവ് വാച്ച്ഡ്.
യെസ് കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ട്.
എത്ര പേര് കണ്ടു?
കണ്ടു.
ബിൻഷ കണ്ടു, നൈന കണ്ടു, ഫസ്ന കണ്ടു.
ഞാൻ കണ്ടു മാം. ഞാൻ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ട് മാം.
കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ആൻസർ ദിസ് ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ. വാട്ട് ഈസ് വെരി വെരി യുണീക്ക് അബൌട്ട് ദിസ് മൂവി? I'll give you the example of other movies. Chak De India pole or film, okay? Or you can think of a film like Dangal, which many of you would have seen. Allengil idu kandittundo, Invictus. No, other Invictus, Chak De India, Dangal. I'm giving out, I mean, the ഈ ഒരു മൂന്ന് പേര് ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞത്, what is unique about them? You can think, add many more films to that category. What is unique about these three movies that I have just spoken about? Escape to Victory. That was one such movie that I saw long back. These are all MS Dhoni, ഒരു ഫിലിം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നല്ലോ, സുശാന്ത് സിംഗ് രാജ്പുത് ആക്ട് ചെയ്ത ഫിലിം. All of these are Dangal, Chak De India, MS Dhoni, then Escape to Victory, Invictus. What is special about all these movies? Yes, Binsha has rightly pointed out the fact that they are all sports movies, right? In each one of these, what is the climactic scene? Chak De India ellavarum kandittundo, I am sure. What is the climactic scene in Chak De India? Or in Dhoni, for example. Dhoni kandittundo film? MS Dhoni, where Sushant Singh Rajput acted the role of Dhoni. It's a biopic. Mufida has watched it. Tell me, Mufida, what is the climax of that movie? Ending alla njan parayunnu. The climax, you know, where the action reaches the highest point.
അവരുടെ ഒരു വിന്നിംഗ് സീൻ
എക്സാക്ട്ലി ഏത് ഇന്ത്യ വേൾഡ് കപ്പ് ജയിക്കുന്ന ഒരു സീനാണ്. ധോണീസ് ആ ഹെലികോപ്റ്റർ ഷോട്ടോട് കൂടിയിട്ട് അവസാനത്തെ ആ ഒരു സ്കോർ ചെയ്ത 6 or 4 ആയിരുന്നു.
സിക്സ് അടിക്കുന്നതാണോ ശ്രീലങ്കയ്ക്കെതിരെ?
ഇന്ത്യ വിന്നിംഗ് ദ വേൾഡ് കപ്പ്. എക്സാക്ട്ലി ആ ഒരു 6 അടിച്ച ഹെലികോപ്റ്റർ ഷോട്ടോടുള്ള 6 അടിച്ച ശേഷം ഇന്ത്യ വിൻസ് ദ വേൾഡ് കപ്പ്. Chak De India എന്താണ്? What is the highlight or the climax? Again, a scene of victory, isn't it? It is so in Dangal, it is so in all these movies. Now, in this match, in Namalkariyam, having, since we now live at a point of time when this real match happened and we know the results of that match. Iran went on to play the World Cup football in Germany. Germany qualified ചെയ്തിട്ട് പോയി, which means that Iran would have defeated Bahrain 1-0 in Iran defeat ചെയ്തു. It was a big victory, a very, very jubilant moment in the whole of Iran. And what would you expect the movie to show you?
ഇറാൻ ജയിക്കും.
ജയിച്ചു.
ജയിച്ചു.
What would you expect the movie to show you? സിക്സ് അടിക്കുന്നതാണോ?
ഗോൾ അടിക്കുന്നത്.
That winning goal അടിക്കുന്ന, that moment you would expect to see, isn't that so? Can you think of any sports movie at all in which you do not have even a single moment of the sport being shown? Any sports movie? Apart from the 5 that I just mentioned, you can think of hundreds of sports movies. Some of them real, some of them based on made-up stories. But in all the sports movies, the major part of the action would be on the field. It could be on the cricket field, it could be in the football stadium, it could be in a horse riding stadium, it could be in a horse riding race course, it could be in a boxing ring, it could be in a basketball court, whatever. The sport would get all the attention. And here is a movie which is all about football, as the title indicates. It is based on a real event where Iran defeated its neighboring country, Bahrain, and qualified for the prestigious FIFA World Cup. In spite of that, you do not see a single moment of the sporting action, except for this little second one, this very, very brief one, where the police officer is blocking the view. He does not want the woman to watch the match, and as a representative of the government, he is in a position where he will do what is expected of him, blocking the view. This is what the whole movie is all about. You have one half of the population, the women, being banned from entering football stadiums. They are not expected to watch the match for reasons that the government considers significant. That is what you have in the first 2, as the film opens. This is how it begins, with these messages. In Iran, women are officially banned from men's sporting events. In June of 2005, Iran defeated Bahrain to qualify for the World Cup. And it is during that match, major portions of this film were shot during that game. And that is why the movie was released in 2006. So it is unique in sports cinema as a movie that does not show even a single scene of the sporting action. In the scene, what you have is the man blocking it. You cannot see the scene fully. You cannot see the ball in motion. You cannot see the action. At no point do we see the goal being shot. You hear the loud voice of the viewers there, the supporters of Iran, hurrahing loudly when the winning goal is scored. But we get to hear that only from outside. Why? Because this is how Jafar Panahi wanted to convey the fact that this is what happens when you are restricted by the government from doing something in the name of their rules. The women here are prevented from watching a live football match. How frustrating it is what he wants the audience to feel. We would also like to see the match, the goal being scored. We would like to see the players in action. There is one player who's like a superstar, and they keep screaming about him and his performance and so on. We, the audience, would also have loved to watch all that. But the film very strategically, very suggestively, very subtly withdraws the action from us, withholds the action from us, And we are left to feel the frustration that these women would in real life have felt. I think I have got to stop there. I'll continue in the next class. We'll look forward to seeing these women in action in the next class. It follows a handful of women who have separately dressed in disguise and, stealthily tried to get into the match between Iran and Bahrain, but they are rounded up and their disguises aren't very convincing. They have all the paraphernalia, the flag painted on their face, the flag, used as a shawl and so on, but still they are detected and they are kept in a little enclosure in the outer ramps of the stadium where the soldiers keep guard over them. So we'll discuss the rest in the next class. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, okay.